Good. I'm great. Lovely to be here, Robert.
Where to start? Where to start? Insurance, health. Actually, let's start with health. What has been the what's your headspace actually been in the health sector when something like that leads with health and devastation to so many all over the world at once? Like how's the headspace approaching business when the problem that the world has actually health related?
Well, yeah, and I think this is uncharted territory when you think about
Mm.
it. Sort of manifested it as a health crisis to start with, then a social crisis, and then an economic crisis. So it has been extremely challenging, I guess, navigating it through what is a multidimensional issue. What we're hearing a lot from our members and customers is health is top of mind, obviously. And actually, I think this is an example where the vulnerabilities of the human, I guess, race has sort of come to the fore as part of this pandemic. And what we're hearing a lot of people is they want a little bit more assurance. What's my flu jab? What's my health status? What's my temperature? All those componentry that we sort of largely took for granted are top of mind now. And so, look, I think, if anything, being in the health industry means we've been really close to this and been able to respond appropriately. But again, what we're hearing from a lot of our customers and members that I guess health is at the forefront of people's minds now.
Yeah, the I've kind of been seeing it in waves, right? The first wave of health medical, next wave of um, uh, commerce, business, economy, money shit, and the third one of community. And we've got the short term, medium term, longer term thing. I've been worried about the long term health of people, this medium term thing of coming back out of or going into and out of a recession, and the short term thing of like, how do we save lives? You actually sit at the intersection of all three of those things, which I'm just thinking about because other people are, like certain people are just dealing with this one piece to get health right, and then certain other people in businesses and hospital, and then the long term side of it. You sit across all three of it. So in a weird way, you're probably having to attack or look at the whole bigger picture. So maybe we'll go here for a sec. When you look at COVID from a business perspective and then from a health perspective and community, how do you sort of navigate the priorities of we want to shift your energy and momentum with priorities within your organization? Like how do you, because that's tension on both sides, right? Because you've got like you've got it all in hitting at once. So how have you kind of, I guess, as a leader of the organization, navigated through your headspace with us?
Well, I think there was probably, when we framed our response, we probably had four big I guess, stages of our pandemic response plan. The first was protect our people, and I think most organisations have done that. This is a health and safety risk at its core. So fundamentally, probably the bedrock of our pandemic response plan was protect our people. The second thing, obviously, because it went from, I guess, level 1 to level 4 extremely quickly, was mobilise our workforce. So we spent quite a lot of time in the ability to have our 800 people fully mobilised, fully operationalised, so we can serve our members and customers. And we had spent a couple of years investing a lot in our digital foundations. About 80% of our business is digital now, and we spent a lot in our sort of cloud-based Office 365 productivity tool sets to make sure. But we had to do the last 10% in about 4 days as a scaled agile organisation. So you can imagine that. But
Yeah.
it was quite beautiful to see an enterprise-wide scaled agile where there was shared outcomes, cross-functional teams, and we really nailed that last 10% extremely well. So in most things, good structured thinking was really important. So protect our people and mobilise our workforce. More recently, Robert, probably the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been really in that cushioning the blow phase. So people's balance sheets and businesses' balance sheets have not even just been destroyed, but heavily disrupted. So we've said, how can we make sure that we are there for our customers and our members, given we're actually owned by them? In the Southern Cross model, our collective members are actually our owners. So deep in our DNA, deep in our culture is the sense of, I guess, making sure we're operating in their best interest. So the third phase is really about how do we cushion the blow for that and keep as many people as possible in that. And the fourth phase, which was pretty much our strategy, is how do we come out strong in a sense? How do we move? Because I'd said to you probably in the past, we might be in the industry of health insurance, but we're in the business of health assurance. How do we make sure we're delivering for our members and customers more assurance about their health and increasing, I guess, the quality of their life through that? So they're probably the four phases and really sort of some structured thinking and progression through that.
Yeah, the dynamic, which is also almost funky. It's not like you're the corporate to shareholders and all this other stuff. It's like it's the people themselves and it's their health. So what's the feedback been like from the people? Like how have they, I guess they're the boss in many respects, but it's probably a different dynamic to just, I guess, regular shareholders on Wall Street or something. Has it been more led with empathy and understanding? Has it been tension on the commerce? Has it been care on the community? What's the vibe from the people like? Because obviously your ownership structure is different, right?
Yeah, and I think that ownership structure it's nice actually having your shareholder as your customer. It short circuits a lot of things. And so ultimately our job is to operate in the best interest of the collective customers. And so at the end of the day, I would probably describe our culture as a result of that is there is a deep sense of cause and purpose. Yeah, empowering Kiwis to live their healthiest lives is our core purpose. So that's deep within our DNA and our culture. Care, the health space is a lot about care. So having detailed, a culture of care is critical. The sense of can-do is really, really important, and the sense of customer. That's who we do serve. So there's one thing about health, Robert, probably outside other industries I've been experienced, is it has a close affinity. Health is very, very personal. We may not think about it every day, but often when we are compromised of our health, it is very deep and very personal. And I think one thing I've noticed in the relationship between our members and our customers is we're sort of almost in a partnership with their health and well-being rather than just delivering.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And that's we've got customers for 30 or 40 years, and that's how they see Southern Cross as an indispensable partner in that health and well-being. And I think that's really come to the fore, and we had to stand and deliver. And things like our $50 million pledge, giving. I guess having money in the pockets of our members and customers rather than on our balance sheet was a good example of how we have probably leaned into that in these tough times.
The structure, so within, people look at corporates and all this other stuff, and then when you look at the NFL, so it's a big business, but the Green Bay Packers have an ownership model where it's actually owned by the fans. And to get a season pass to the Green Bay Packers, there's a wait list of 100 years now, just to be on the wait list for it, because it changes the dynamic of relationship, of the culture of the organization, of the bonds with and the love and the care and all the rest of it. So yeah, when it affects you deeply, and that's just sport. So imagine when it's stuff that really, really affects you. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I hadn't actually thought that for a second. But then when you got one of the things you're talking about before, because you obviously lucky, you said 90% of the business was there. You had to do that last 10%. A lot of businesses had to go from 0 to 100 real quick, right? And I've been thinking about looking at all these different businesses about the gaps and holes in the boat, tech holes in the boat, which have now going to have to get patched up after this entire thing. You obviously were ahead of the game really early to do that. And, we had Clive Omerod on the show, the CEO of Les Mills, and he was saying this didn't change our strategy at all. It did is it sped it up from like 3 years to 3 days or 3 weeks or whatever it was, right?
Exactly.
And so you were actually ahead of that as well, because you not only had thought about it, you had actually already transitioned 90% of your business to go there anyway. So from a strategic standpoint, probably for yourself, probably really similar to Les Mills, there's not much actually probably changed. You just had to, accelerate that last 10% really fast, right? Like, did it make you feel probably either confident or proud that the strategy was right? Did it validate where you knew it was going to? Like, there was probably a lot of probably feedback and probably just safety to the business, knowing you'd made the right call soon, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you'd be the first to probably agree around digital, isn't it? I mean, I think digital is an investment, a strategy to deliver a customer experience that really defines your brand. Yeah. And so we have done a lot of work, I guess, investing in our digital foundations for, the functional excellence of our business or automating that business. But a large amount of our strategy is around reimagining, I guess, the customer experiences, powered by digital, that deeply build health assurance, deeply build affinity with our membership. And so I sort of probably see them as different. A lot of work was done in making sure that we could mobilise and operationalise, but we're only at the start of a journey about reimagining the customer experience as a health assurer, which is different than paying the bills, I guess, as a health insurer. And so I think, as you're right, there's been some extreme pivots with business, when the revenues have collapsed, and it's not their fault. But again, to really understand who your customers, really understand what your value proposition is, really understand how you're going to compete, and fueled by digital, fueled by those sorts of things, I think is critical. If I look at the health system now, I'd probably describe its future system as digital at its core, supported by the incredible people that wrap around it. But the reality is we've been operating in a physical distancing type mode. It's going to be this for some time. So making sure that things like virtual care, things that augmented reality are going to find their place, I think, in some of the modern experiences.
Yeah, the time for reimagine all of that, especially from a customer side, it's a no-brainer that's happening. But the difference, obviously, within health is we had Janine Crossan on the show, the Powered by Flossie CEO, and she was saying it's almost going to be an economy of fear, where, especially when it comes to hygiene, obviously with hair care and nail products and whatever, physical distance, touch, closeness, proximity is going to be the mindset of customers is going to be it's going to be quite fearful for the next bit. Obviously, with a close up, it's like it's right on you, it's in you, it's blood, it's all the rest of it. How do you think this future potential world of customer experience starts to look like from a medical perspective? Because I'm imagining it's not necessarily back to the drawing board, but is the approach utilizing tech to create more visible safety, or with data, or like what's the kind of the approach that people in your world are talking about when it comes to the future customer experience of health?
I would probably, that's the $1 million question, isn't it, really? But I think what I see, and I probably describe it as two things. We've, in New Zealand in particular, we're quite blessed with a very good system, but I would call it largely a very classical and traditional system, which is when you're sick, you have symptoms, you turn up in a physical space, and you get well looked after. I think there's still going to be quite a bit of disruption for, I guess, the psychology of patients and customers, that they are going to want to be served, as well as the health force, in different ways. So I put that in the how do we functionally deliver sick care well. But there's this other area, which is probably more around healthcare, is how do I get assurance that I'm actually healthy, rather than I have symptoms and need to be treated when I'm sick. And I think that is a territory. More and more people are going to want to understand, what is my temperature? More and more people are going to understand, what is my immunity status? More and more people is, how resilient am I, mentally and physically, to these sorts of things, and empowering people around that. I do think that's probably a true healthcare system rather than a sick care system.
Ever since Nike put the little trackers into track steps, and then the Fitbits and the thing, I've still got one now, the visualization of data in real time, the shareability, the AR stuff, the virtual robotic operation stuff that's going through, it all gets you quite it's not only accepted, it's almost exciting, but to be able to use that for the right thing is always good for the customer. When you look at this next sort of wave ahead, what gets you most fearful at a New Zealand level, and then at a global level, when you look at the effects of COVID to New Zealand and the world?
Well, I guess there's probably immediate fear at the moment, is, I guess, immunisations are still in the 12 to 18 month camp. And all the advice I'm getting is that's not something that's going to instantly happen. So if you think about a 12 to 18 month horizon, where in New Zealand you could be in a level 2 situation for some time, physical distancing, that is quite a long time, and a number of different behaviours and that sort of manifest over that period of time. Now, they're looking to accelerate some treatments to reduce the worst effects of COVID. I think that's probably more likely than an immunisation in the short term. So there's this real fear at the moment, as you say, around that. I think the response here in New Zealand has been close to textbook in terms of reducing the extent of COVID in the New Zealand environment, and we're lucky that we have some borders that we can control. So I do feel like that, but there is a heightened anxiety there. I guess my fear is the system doesn't respond, or to be a true healthcare system, a well-integrated system. Because health is actually quite very bespoke, it's quite fragmented. But so the question is, a lot of other industries have looked at health as a global, haven't they? New Zealand has exported extremely well. It's thinking globally. Health's often been quite domestic. So I just hope that really through this, the investment in the right long-term system for New Zealand Inc. and for Kiwis is at the forefront, I guess, of the thinking here, because this is not a once-off,
Totally. Well, back to the point about cloud is, most people that have shifted into this new world now, they're on these, I'm calling these like cloud digital train tracks. If it goes back to business as usual, whatever, you can't really. Those two worlds aren't going to mesh anymore because there's too many different variables: the virtual, the remote, the staffing, the money, the health, the data. Just it's too much. And then when you go for where it's going to go in the future, it needs, like what we've been talking about, like the brave leadership of either boards and stuff, going to be handbrake or gas. It's going to be offense or defense. Like for the hammer down, let's try the stuff. And so I think there's going to be a really clear divide with, I guess, defense-based leadership and boards, or offense-based leadership, and really anyone that's in management, whatever, is going to be saying, hey, well, we shifted, to your point, 10% or 20, 30, 50% of our business totally online within a couple of days. Why can't we try ... Why aren't we ... So there's going to be quite a lot of, and to be a fly on the wall of a lot of these, when people get back in the same room together, just the decompression of everyone just getting everything out is going to be, it's going to be some long board meetings, I'll tell you that much. There's going to be some shit. People are like, what the fuck? But it's going to need to happen, and I just don't want this to be a moment where the world stops, pauses, everyone has more than enough time to reset, and after taking on all board, they go back to the old ways that it was, just because it's more convenient for their own headspace. That will be the biggest, gong show, which I just don't want to have happen. That's the thing that I would hate.
And I think probably the greatest trait of leadership is really adaptability and agility. It's certainly been tested through this. But you're right, boards or humans is either risk on or risk off. We don't really operate very well in that middle zone. We're either conservative or full on. And so all board members are humans. But the question is here is, I guess your fight for survival is how quickly can you have a growth mindset? How quickly can you see the shifts on the horizon rather than just the waves lapping at your feet? So how adaptable and agile are you in your operating model, through your leadership and those sorts of things? So I think leadership for me is all about adaptability and agility now. And you only got to go back to, it's not the strongest that survive, it's the most adaptable, isn't it? And I think that's true of business.
What's been the biggest things that surprised you or got you most proud of your team in this last 6 weeks?
We simply lived our values. I think that's probably what I'm most proud of. Like, as I say, for me, a brand used to be, what you promise to the market, but a brand nowadays is really about what your customers tell you it is. And so your customers tell you what your brand is based on the experiences they have, not what's on telly. And so for me, we're a glass box brand. So what you see on the outside is what you should see on the inside. So I feel the most proud that our people, our leadership, live the values of our organisation through this, and we were true to those, and we were true in delivering to our purpose and our mission, and I guess our business model. So I think when I stand back from it, because brands are really defined in tough times, not really defined in good times, I feel like we stepped up to the plate and lived our values. And I think that's probably, when I look back at that, that's probably the most important thing. But also, as you say, we achieved a lot in a very short period of time.
It's crazy, eh?
Like so why can't we do that all the time? Yeah. And so for me, it did show that a scaled agile model, where it's really purposeful, it's really outcome orientated, it's very strong cross-functional, and it's all in, does deliver.
I mean, you had the advantage if 90% of your flipping business was already in the digi space. 100% of your staff probably at least knew what Google Teams was, or Microsoft Teams, or Google Hangouts, or what a Slack channel meant. I mean, some of the chat has been mind-blowing that some of these businesses have had no clue and had got forced into it, and just the shock of reality to this new world would have been such a fearful time for so many when they didn't know. It's like, because I know what it's like if I look at a flipping recipe to cook pasta, I'm probably like, what is that shit? I don't know what that's like. But imagine what they would be like in the tech world that they don't understand it anyway. And what I also kind of, we had Ed Hyde on, who's the chief operating officer, customer officer at Chorus. And they were saying, the work that they made the call on 10 years ago built out the infrastructure to enable humans today to actually be able to communicate effectively and run these businesses. But at the time, if everyone remembers, they got so much shit for it because they're like, why are you spending all the money, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes it takes that bravery early. That was a call made a decade ago before this happened, to have the infrastructure in place to literally be able to keep an entire country's economy rolling to some degree, digitally, staff working remotely. It wouldn't have been possible. It would have been a Great Depression in New Zealand if that shit hadn't happened. So I think people need to also be mindful of that too. As tough as it is commercially, it could be so much worse if there wasn't enough brave leadership earlier, like decades ago. And so when I think about this moment now, it's the same thing, right? Because in 10 years from now, they're going to be saying, oh, I'm so lucky we did ... now in 2020 after COVID AC, because we would have been stuffed with whatever. So I think it's quite a, to your point before, it's like, it's not exposing leadership, but it's really just bringing great leaders to the forefront that are sort of making these calls, right? Like when you look at this next, I've been thinking about, PC pre-COVID, AC after COVID. When you look at AC, the world of AC, what gets you most excited about the New Zealand of what could be? With, obviously we're hoping to get through the medical stuff right, and the financial, like, let's just park that. But at a macro, when you look at it, if you're an alien looking at New Zealand, what would get you most excited about what our new future could potentially look like?
Well, I guess what always, my hope for New Zealand has always been, and what gets me most excited, is the ability, I guess, to industrialize our ideas as a nation, into long-term, high-margin export businesses, to slowly reshape our economy over time. Because I always believe that New Zealand, in New Zealand's prosperity, and its potential. And I think over the last 5 to 10 years' time, we've learned how to industrialize businesses to some levels of scale. That was not in our DNA 10 years, 20 years, 30 years prior to that. So I'd like to keep on thinking that our economy, can be an export economy. It can be a large, high-margin digital economy. And I just think with the move at a global scale, to digital propositions, all those sorts of things, then if we do organise ourselves well, if we do think about the world rather than just domestically, we can reshape, I guess, our future prospects as a country. And so that's always what gets me most excited, is not selling out, not becoming a small medium, just a small medium businesses. They are still the backbone of our country and should be. But how do we scale some large businesses globally? As a result, I guess, of the learnings of this and the opportunities that come from this.
It's always going to be the one, New Zealand to the world, and even just from a tech perspective, it was a second biggest exporter. It was on track to be number one within 18 months, and this is a while ago. I'm imagining now without tourism there and the rest of it, probably wins by default at this point, unfortunately. Dude, I really appreciate your time, man. I know you're a busy man. You got your fingers in a whole bunch of shit that's rolling along, and I'll be keen to check back in of when we get back down to the next level of when leadership and boards get back together and they have the decompress and the unwind of all the stuff that happened, some of the actual learnings and stuff that came out of it as well, which can help make the businesses go faster. But I've been fortunate enough, I've got to meet a bunch of your team and crew, and everyone's
Yeah.
pretty on the same page. Though it's quite cool, like, because obviously, like, we're having the yarn. So yeah, you're pretty fortunate that you got obviously leading pretty well from the front. And I mean, right at the start, you said it, you were 90% there before this even kicked off. So you definitely made the calls. But I appreciate your time, brother, and I wish you well for this next little phase.
And pleasure, Robert. And thanks, actually. You were a little bit of a fire starter with some of our culture too. So you're part of our family. So I do really, really appreciate you
Oh,
having me on here and what you're doing, actually, to get the New Zealand narrative and conversation going.
no, appreciate it, brother. It's always a classic one because I'll come in and half the time they can use me as a scapegoat after I leave to just blame me for it. Love your work, brother. Thanks heaps,
All
dude.
right. See you later.
See you, bro. Peace.
All right.
What a champion, the bro, Nick, legend. Have a good day, team. I'll see you soon.